Hey guys, what's going on? This is Adam R46 here. Thanks for joining us for the newest episode of Know Before You Go. Today we're going to be touching on the Spa Belgian Grand Prix and the Zandvoort GP. And I went to both of these races last year, and it was quite the vibe. Both races are pretty great to go to. Both of them have, well, I guess Spa is a little bit more historic, but Zandvoort is fairly new. It's got some history, but it's been a while since it rejoined the calendar. But let's see. Today, we've got Greg with FanAmp joining us.
Hey everyone. I have never been to either of these races, but I'm going to Zandvoort this year. Have been to the other ones many times, so I'm super excited.
We've got Andy with Eiffel Destinations.
Hi everyone. Yes, I've been to Spa, the Belgian Grand Prix, three or four times. Most recently in 2019, and I'm going this year, which I'm looking forward to. And I went to the first Dutch Grand Prix since it came back. So that was 2021. I think it was close to, 35 years, I think, since it was held previously. And that's also one I'm looking forward to attending this year.
Makes me feel young. And we've also got They See Me Running, who I got the privilege of hanging out with in Austria a couple weeks ago.
Yes, it was so nice. Hi, guys. I haven't been to any of the races. My addition here is just that I'm Dutch and Belgian. So I can give a bit of insight on the transportation and what it's going to be like.
Yeah.
So you're Dutch and Belgian, just like Max Verstappen.
Yeah, basically, yeah. I wasn't born in Belgium, so he's more Belgian, I'd say. But
you're more of a Ferrari fan, aren't you? Not as much a Max fan.
Ferrari and McLaren, yeah. I don't know. I got I remember when I was like getting my nails done, my nail stylist was like, "You don't support Max?" Like, oh my god, like, you know how much shit you'll get for that? Like, it wasn't bad in the end, but I did get some people like, "Oh, you're wearing the wrong merch."
Yeah. I don't know. I got a little bit of that, but it's usually just like playful banter. It's not really anything like
yeah.
serious.
Well,
like
no,
some people...
yeah, same.
Yeah. But
it wasn't bad, but specifically because I'm Dutch, people were like, "Oh, you don't support Max? Like, you're wearing the wrong merch."
Yeah, but yeah, Austria was really fun. It's my first time I've been to that race, and I flew out to Vienna, took a train, stayed in Graz, and yeah, if you follow us on some of the episodes we've done before, you I'd mentioned kind of what my plan was, and I ended up taking the shuttle from Graz, which was really easy to do, and it's one of the most beautiful places I've been. I mean, it's just surrounded by mountains. It just looks like a Windows screensaver, just every direction you look, and the people were really fun. Everybody was really friendly, and I mean, the racing was awesome. It was a sprint race, so it was a busy 3 days, and I normally only go Saturday, Sunday, but because it's a sprint with qualifying on Friday, I actually went on Friday to this race. It's good. What was your experience running?
Yeah, it was really good. The Austrian people are really friendly. Like, I know that in some places in Europe and in some countries, if you don't speak the native language, you'll definitely get treated differently. I didn't see any of that in Austria. I do speak German, but I don't know. I got confused for a native sometimes, but I feel like my German is not good enough to be like, oh yeah, she's definitely a native. But yeah, it was beautiful there. It was my first Grand Prix ever. It was beautiful. It was, honestly, it's gonna be hard to top the experience. It was just amazing.
And you had a pretty different experience.
I was going to ask how your experience was as a first-time female fan, because F1 is historically being mainly men at the track. Did you?
Yeah.
Were there lots of other female fans there? Did you have a good experience? And that's also in the context of last year. There were, some not very good stories about poor treatment of female fans in Austria. Some drunken fans. Maybe shouting and that kind of thing. So I hope you didn't experience anything like that, but how was your experience?
Yeah, no, honestly, it was fine. I did get like I read obviously all the people saying like, oh, last year was really bad, and even like people around me were saying like, oh, you're going alone. Oh, good luck to you then. But there were a bunch of other female solo travelers. I made friends with a bunch of them. But there was nothing. There was one incident where a drunk person put his arm around me, but I managed to like get him off of me quickly, and it was just it was one of those things that, yeah, sure, it's not like a nice experience, but it happens. But that was the only instance that happened. I didn't have a single problem.
And the guy was just trying to talk to you?
And you camped at the truck. Sorry.
Sorry, the guy was just trying to talk to you, or what happened with that?
I guess he just put his arm around me, and he started like he didn't really make sense because he was really drunk. But he just put his arm around me and started talking to me, and I was like, no, I'm not interested. Bye. And then when he still wouldn't leave, I just spoke Dutch to him, and then I guess he thought that I didn't speak English. I don't know. He just left.
Yeah. And Andy, what were you saying?
Yeah, I was just going to ask Ronan about the camping experience. Which campground did you stay in, and how was it? There was a bit of rain, I think.
That's a funny story. Yeah, no, that's a funny story because I didn't stay on any of the official campsites. I emailed a farmer. It was within 2 minutes of the entrance. But I emailed a farmer if I could stay on his land, and he said, yeah, sure. So it was across the road from the red campsite. But I didn't stay on any of the official campings, but it was amazing. There was a lot of noise from the red zone. It just continued throughout the night, didn't stop. But I guess that's what you sign up for. So it was.
Tell me, did this farmer have like toilets and showers, or how did that work? Or were you able
everything.
Okay, so
everything was taken care of.
Did you rent it, or did they rent it to other people, or was it just you? Like you got the exclusive rights?
No, there were a bunch of other people, but not a lot. It was like maybe 10 tents in total.
So it sounds like unofficial but organized camping.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some of that around here at Coda also. There's a few houses that surround the circuit up by Turn 1 that I typically park at. And they have their regulars who show up with RVs and tents and camp on their properties. And it's a similar situation where you can usually book online or just call them ahead of time and just kind of, they fill up really quick. But yeah, it's like organized, unofficial, just offside across the road kind of thing.
This is kind of like a hidden gem.
It's a pretty awesome find. I was going to say, before we get into the camping, because I know we're going to stay on that with Belgium. Andy, you were at Silverstone, right?
I was, yep.
How was that experience?
It was good. Silverstone, I'll be completely honest, is not my favorite race to attend. I don't know. I find, the flat, open expanse of Silverstone a little bit featureless, but obviously that's made up for by the fans. It's probably going to be the most attended race of the year. It was actually, I think, the second most attended race of all time, history-wise. 480,000 fans over the weekend. You have to remember the way this is counted. If someone goes for all 3 days, they're counted 3 times. But I think it was 150, 160,000 on race day, which is a lot. There's a lot of tracks on the calendar that, just not big enough to even be able to accommodate so many people. But, it's a bit challenging getting in and out of the circuit, especially out. There can be delays. But, it was a good weekend. It had the weather gave everything. The racing was pretty good. And I enjoyed it as much as I can enjoy Silverstone. I was working the whole time. Didn't have much freedom to explore, but it was a good weekend.
Sweet, that sounds awesome.
Yeah,
I've never been. I always wanted to go. All right, so let's transition over to Spa. So that circuit is kind of, it's pretty historic. It's outside of kind of I would say halfway between Brussels and Cologne. It's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, just surrounded by smaller towns. So there's some kind of medium-sized motorways you can take to get out there. But once you venture off towards the circuit, it's just smaller roads. And so the infrastructure around the circuit is pretty tedious if you're driving back and forth, or you're going to be stuck in traffic either way. But the circuit is massive, but surprisingly doesn't hold a ton of people just because it uses a lot of natural elevation, and some of the areas are really steep. It takes a bit of a workout just to move around the circuit. But being in the middle of nowhere, I mean, I say middle of nowhere, but that's just kind of what it feels like compared to a circuit like Zandvoort, for example. But being a bit more remote, I guess is a better word. The easiest way to experience Spa is to camp. And so that's where I would expect kind of a similar experience to Ronin over in Austria, where camping is kind of the way to go, where you arrive on either Wednesday or Thursday, just kind of hang out, likely until Monday, because leaving on Sunday is definitely a pain. It's a challenge to get out of there in any kind of reasonable time.
What's the implication of that for like the atmosphere? Because from all the photos that you were all sending, like Austria just seems like a whole different ballgame. Like people are there, you're celebrating it. You're gonna.
I mean, the fan zone is pretty awesome. It shows a really good. It's got a really good vibe happening. There's constant music. There's a lot of food. There's a lot of beer. There's just. It seems a bit chaotic, but it's actually pretty organized. At least last year, the lines were pretty minimal. Everything is really fast. They have one of the probably most efficient token system I've ever used, where they have a prepaid card that you use. It uses like the tap to pay system. And so all the vendors only accept that. And it's actually really easy to purchase the card. You can use a credit card or cash. And then to refill the card, you can do it by phone, or you can go to one of the kiosks. But because it actually worked, all the lines moved. There was no fumbling about with your credit cards. Nobody's credit cards having issues. Nobody fumbling with cash back and forth. It just worked really well. But the fan zone and the vibe for the circuit, it's kind of like just EDM. It's just constant, like similar to Austria. It seems like one of the Max Verstappen home races. And so it's kind of got that vibe of like max, super max, just kind of going constantly. And the campsites are a bit separated. They try to keep that area, that kind of EDM all night party, over to the young village, where it's encouraged for campers of the ages between 17 and 27, I believe, just to try to help keep some of the noise in one area. And compared to Austria, where it was just every campsite was just blaring music 24/7 for that week. Spa is kind of situated near some smaller towns that are normal residential, just smaller towns where a lot of people live. So they try to limit some of the noise from, just blaring into people's homes on that race week. Andrew, when you went, where did you stay?
Going back to 2001, I camped at the Belgian Grand Prix with my best mate from Australia. And that was my first European race ever, having gone to races in Australia. It was exciting, what I remember of it. It was a different era. Obviously, Michael Schumacher was winning. There was a certain kind of Michael Schumacher fan from Germany that was everywhere. Mullets and singlets everywhere and lots of drinking.
Like Max Verstappen fans.
No, well, Max.
Very similar.
Was Max even born in 2001? I think barely. Yeah, he might have been 1 or 2. Anyway, more recently, I went in 2015 only Friday, Saturday. I was actually working in Paris, and I can't even remember the name of a town where I stayed, but I drove. It was probably 30 minutes from the track. Stayed in a kind of basic hotel in this small town. But more recently, I worked at the race in 2018 and 2019. And again, I can't even remember the names, but it wasn't super close. kind of hotels, in the middle of nowhere, essentially. But in terms of nearby, I'm not sure on the pronunciation, but Malmedy is probably the biggest close town. Of course, the original Spa town, Spa, is also quite close. And then there's just accommodation, dotted all around. It's a beautiful mountainous area. There's campgrounds, including, more established, not temporary for the race, but not year-round, but summer campgrounds that you can also stay at. And then Verviers is also probably the closest big town, and that's the closest town with the train connection as well, which is important if you're coming from further afield, because if you can get to Verviers, there's a regular shuttle bus, a local bus, to get you from there to almost to the track on race weekend.
Yeah, and that bus, I believe it's around 20 euros for a 3-day pass.
Yes.
It seems like it's pretty organized, but they do have to take normal roads, and so you will be stuck in some traffic. There's no exclusive lanes or anything that they use, and it's just kind of a normal bus service.
One thing I would say that I have driven out of Spa after the race in 2018 and 19, and also I think 2015, but it wasn't after the race. But what they do with the parking, I think they actually control the local police control the local roads very well. You're in, say, the yellow parking, and I think you have a parking slide there, Greg, somewhere. If you could bring that up, maybe. But you're going to be you're going to have to leave the circuit by the road or the route that they tell you. You can't go, I want to go this way. They'll go, no, for the first 5-10 kilometers, you might be on a very small road, even a lane, may not even be paved. And that's just to basically ease the flow of traffic so that they can control which way everyone goes.
Yeah.
So that's something to be aware of. And it does work quite well. 2021, lots of horror stories, but then that was because of the weather, wasn't it? Torrential rain much of the weekend. The race was essentially cancelled. Mud everywhere in the car parks, and obviously that was issues. But without rain, even if the attendance will be very high this year, I think the traffic control around Spa moves as well as it can, given the amount of traffic involved.
Yeah, the roads are just not built for supporting all the traffic, and that's why the best thing to do is camp there. But if you're not camping, there's plenty of other places to stay. There's a lot of really good options. That kind of dictates how you're going to get to the race, on where you can find a place to stay, because Malmedy is probably where I would stay if I could. I stayed in Stavelo last year, which worked out great. As soon as the calendar was announced, I booked an Airbnb in Stavelo. It was a small house kind of on a hill near some a bicycle path. And so I couldn't figure out how to rent a bike, and I ended up doing the paved parking with a shuttle in Malmedy, which is about 20 euros a day. Normally it's about a 10-minute drive, but it took probably about 30 to 45 minutes on both Saturday and Sunday. And once you get to the parking lot, then you walk over to a shuttle, and the shuttle is just kind of stuck in traffic as you get to the circuit, which took another 20 to 30 minutes. And then it feels like a constant uphill walk, just walking around the circuit. And so all in all, from Stavelo, it took me probably about an hour and a half to 2 hours to get to my grandstand, with all transportation, kind of included into that time frame. And
I'm guessing though, if you had been able to get a bicycle, you probably could have ridden there in 30 minutes from where you were staying.
Yeah, exactly. And so according to my Airbnb host, it was like a 15-minute bike ride to the bicycle parking over by Blanchimont. Mm-hmm. And so from there, it's probably about a 30-minute walk over to Gold 3, where I was sitting at Rouge, which...
so it's a long way. Yeah, Blanchimont to the paddock area, and that where most fans watch it's a long walk.
Yeah, and so it would have taken me 15 minutes to get to the circuit, but from Blanchimont over to Rouge, it's about a 40-minute walk. And so it feels like it's constantly uphill. Like it's that old man yelling at clouds of like, it was uphill both ways. It feels like it's uphill both ways. It's just, it's an intense circuit. It's one of the most elevation or like elevated circuits that I've explored. It's a lot. And
comfortable shoes are an absolute must. I mean, that was probably the case in Austria as well, but well, I think it is, especially if you're camping. But you know, you really need hiking boots for Spa-Francorchamps.
Yeah, I think Ronan had a pretty big hill to walk up over to turn 3 over in Austria.
Yep. Yeah, I just did it on my sneakers, which kind of worked out, but next time I would probably take hiking shoes.
Yeah, how was it with the rain? Because Spa is also just like prepare for the weather. And did you have more than one pair of shoes or just one pair of shoes?
I had 2 pairs of shoes. But it was not super bad. I could do it with 1 pair in Austria, that was. But honestly, in Spa, if it like properly rains, you're gonna want your hiking boots. Yeah, so I'd advise taking them. Because you might get away with sneakers, but then again, you might not.
You'll probably never wear them again.
Yeah,
probably not. No, if it properly rains, no, you won't.
Yeah, and so depending on where you could book is how you can get to the circuit, and that's kind of what dictates it all. Because there's a lot of small towns nearby, like Stavola or Malmedy, and it's just the bookings go fast, and so that will just kind of dictate how you're going to get to the circuit. Which, like Andy was saying, Verviers is a good option if you can take a train from one of the major cities, whether you're staying in Germany or staying in the Netherlands. It's pretty well connected. Also to Brussels. And they the circuit also organizes some long distance shuttles, as they call it, where you can take, you can stay in Brussels and you can board a bus in the morning, take you straight to the circuit. And then the return also, you're kind of basically what I did in Graz, but the only downside of that is you're kind of, need to think about the time that you need to return. And so that's why you might not have enough time to explore the circuit like you would like, or see some of the evening concerts, things like that. You just need to take into consideration.
Yeah, it felt like with this, that it's like a one and done. You either make your bus or you miss it, and that's it. And given the distance that you'd have to travel, like there's really not much in the way of a backup, except maybe you buy a train ticket. Then you have to get the shuttle. So I think it's going to set you back a bit if you miss that.
Yeah, and so I mean, I would definitely do that. It's a good option, especially if you're like me. I don't really like to camp very much. I like beds, and I don't mind sitting on a bus for an hour so that I can get to a bed, because it's kind of mindless. I mean, you don't have to do anything. You just need to be somewhere at the right time, and then you can get back to your hotel or Airbnb, and you can probably find some cheaper accommodation in some of the bigger cities.
Yeah, and it felt like being on the north side is the better way to be, either going towards Germany or heading back west towards Brussels.
Yeah.
In terms of getting there, right? Like obviously race day traffic, it's bad, but even what about setting up for camping? I imagine, given the fact that a lot of this is very rural, that there's backed up roads, Thursday night or Wednesday rushing in, trying to set up camper.
I don't think it's too bad.
Okay.
Because it gives you more flexibility to arrive, I think, throughout the day. It's not everybody's trying to make it before free practice 1 type of thing, where I believe campsites open on Wednesday, but I think most people will arrive Thursday.
Yeah, some of them, I think, like the green or the spa facilitated ones open Thursday morning. So I guess, there probably is some level of a rush of people.
Yeah.
And do you know, I don't know if any of you know, but there was a question from Sam asking if they're bringing a camper van, can they set up a tent against it in one of those green camp zones?
I think it depends on the campsite, whether they allow vehicles or not, because some of them, they park the vehicle and you have to set up
separate sections for RVs and campers. And if you book a pitch in the RV camper van section, then I'm sure you can put a tent next to it.
If it allows, would a car be synonymous with a camper van, or is that considered separate?
I think it's different.
Okay, so worth contacting the circuit.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, check the specifics on the campsite that they booked, because a lot of them mention vehicle size on what you're allowed, and I mean, most people with campers usually set up tents or kind of those pop-up easy up tents next to it so that they can, you know, have a place to kind of lounge.
Worth mentioning in case, because a question came up in a group I run for another race for Monza, and they said, "Oh, we're on a budget. We want to, you know, park in the car park and sleep in the car." Well, you know, you're not going to be able to do that. It's not allowed. And also at Spa, I think it's specifically mentioned, you know, in the parking information, you know, no cars are allowed to be left overnight. You know, they'll tow them. So you can't sleep in your car.
Yeah, you'd have to get one of the camping passes for a vehicle to be able to leave it there, because the car parks are supposed to be, you know, nobody's supposed to leave their car there overnight.
There was a question, and I think it's Miha, but I may be butchering the pronunciation, so I'm sorry. But it was just, do you mind repeating the shuttle time between Verviers and the track? Like how long it takes?
I think it should take around 15 to 20 minutes. It could take a little bit longer.
I think it's more like 30 minutes on a normal day. So I think it might be more like 30, 45 minutes.
Yeah, it's basically whatever time you plan on getting to the circuit in your head, add an hour to it. And that way you kind of lower your expectations a bit. And if it takes less than that, you're kind of pleasantly surprised, because I would estimate, if you're staying off site, that it's going to take you around 2 hours.
Yeah. One thing I'd mention, we've talked a lot about camping and staying in other places to save money. But if we have anyone listening or that watches this, that when money is not an object, then you need to know about the Hotel de la Source. Very hard to, that's the one in the middle, actually. And it's right near La Source and the Source entrance to the track. Mostly it will be, you know, teams and drivers and F1 personnel staying there. But I know that, for example, F1 Experiences does get some rooms, and you can book a room there. So if money is no object and you want to stay, you know, literally a 5-minute walk from the gates and 10 minutes from a lot of the grandstands, then that is a really nice hotel right next to the track.
Yeah, I think I'd be in the camp of the city hotel, actually. Like, stay in Belgium, stay in something nice, you know, and then take the hour train and then take the shuttle.
Yeah, and then, well, not even not in Belgium, you know, there's places within an hour, like Maastricht, I think, is only an hour from the circuit, or Aachen in Germany is only an hour from the circuit as well.
Yeah, it's really not too bad. You're just gonna kind of need to leave early to be there a little early to try to beat some of the traffic. But overall, if you kind of estimate, you know, something reasonable time frame for arrival, you should be good.
For the camping options, just to go back here for a minute. So there's a bunch of different zones that you can stay at, and I think a lot of them have different personalities. The Young Village was the one where a lot of the parties are later at night. Is that right?
Yeah. And so I was staying in Stavelo, which is a few miles away, and I can hear the music at the Young Village like late at night. It wasn't incredibly loud, but I had the windows open kind of after dinner, and we were just I think we were watching TV or something. I just hear like a little boom, boom, boom. It's just like blaring music that just kind of echoes through the hills.
So, Ronan, what was the vibe like in Austria? Because maybe that'll give people a good comparison.
I mean, it was just constant EDM. There was two different fan zone areas. There was the Steiermark Village and then the fan zone. And Ronan, did you go to the Steiermark Village?
Well, that was on my way to the entrance. So I walked through it, and that's where I would usually have dinner.
Yeah.
But it was just, I was sleeping like across the road from the Steiermark Village. So all the music, I got to hear it. I got to experience it. Also at 4 a.m., which was less nice, but it's kind of, in a way it's nice because you constantly have that nice and party atmosphere going.
Yeah, so that's one of the I guess could be a benefit of camping, is that you're just kind of living the festival life for a weekend.
Yeah.
And are there two tiers of camping here, like the glamping and the regular?
Yeah, so GP Tents, I believe, has some of the glamping style kind of preset stuff where you can just kind of show up and they have everything taken care of for you. They're kind of like tent hotels where everything feels a little bit semi-permanent with bathrooms, showers, and everything like that, where it's kind of worry-free. And I'm not sure what part of the circuit those are, but it's like a third-party company.
It's in the green camping zone at Spa, so it's quite close to the Combs entrance, the southern one on that map there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because it's technically tilted. That map is
okay. Well,
north and left side.
Yes. Yeah. The lower one on the picture we're looking at right now.
I guess the other big part about getting to Spa, if you're coming from a different country, is you can fly to basically any of the major airports near Belgium. I mean, Brussels is probably the closest with the most international destinations. Cologne,
Frankfurt is not too far away either.
Yeah, Frankfurt is not very far. I guess it's just out of shot of the image we have on the screen.
I've even driven from Paris to Spa when I went in 2015 for the week for Friday, Saturday, and I think it was 3.5 hour drive from Paris. I mean, this is very much in the heart of Western Europe. You know, countries all around. You know, lots of amazing cities, airports. There's about 7 airports within a 1 to 2 hour drive, I think, of Spa.
Yeah, I flew into Amsterdam and it was like a 3 hour, maybe 2.5 or 3 hour drive out there to Spa, which is not bad. Yeah. And it's an easy drive if you're from like North America or a different country. I mean, I don't know, everything was smooth and Google Maps worked really well.
Yeah, and in terms of airports, Eindhoven Airport is really nice. I mean, if you're coming from America, you're not going to be able to fly into Eindhoven. But I think they also got like a long distance shuttle running from Eindhoven to Spa.
Yep, I think.
But Eindhoven is a really nice and calm airport, and just it's. I've been to Brussels, Amsterdam, Eindhoven, Rotterdam, and also Düsseldorf. But Eindhoven is by far like the calmest and the most chill airport. And it's also the closest out of the Dutch airports.
Mm-hmm.
Which that's another thing I wanted to touch on is the language and the crowd. I was really surprised because it's in Belgium. Most like the prominent language everybody was speaking in that area was Dutch. I was expecting a little bit more French or German, but it was probably about 90% Dutch. Even the commentary on the circuit was mostly Dutch, and it kind of switched a little bit between French, English, and Dutch. But yeah, if you speak a little Dutch, it'll probably get you a little bit farther. But for the most part, my English was fine, and my wife knows a little bit more French than me. So whenever either of those kind of fell through, defaulting back to French was pretty good. Just nothing intense, just basic, being able to interact with people, how to order 2 beers, how to order food, and asking where the toilet is. Things like that really make a big difference and show that you're here to you respect the local culture. You're not just like, hey, I'm American, why don't you speak English type of thing. And so it makes a big difference.
That's a general thing in Europe. If you, especially Americans, if you show up and just expect everyone to speak English to you, that's kind of a thing. Well, no, we don't mind speaking English, but you'd be surprised at how many like American tourists just show up here, speak English to you, and expect you to speak English back.
That's what we're taught in school.
Yeah. Well, that's not. I mean, usually it's appreciated if you learn even if you just learn hello in the local language, it's appreciated.
Exactly. And we should probably talk a little bit about the race experience. We talked about where to stay and how to get there, but you're going to spend 3 days at the track.
Before we sorry, Andy, sorry to interrupt you. Yeah. One thing that was raised up by someone was they were saying for the campsites, there's no departures allowed between 4:30 and 7:30 p.m. on Sunday. So just if you're trying to leave, trying to rush out, just be mindful of that. and plan ahead. You're probably going to be there. Adam, you said this at the beginning, like, do not plan to leave and just rush out on Sunday. But
yeah,
another reason you're just going to get stuck.
Yeah, so I had a message to me. I can't remember the username, but they asked if they wanted. They're coming from the UK and they wanted to try to get some of the driving back done on Sunday evening, but that's pretty ambitious. I wouldn't really recommend planning on doing that. It's just going to be more stress and more of a headache to try to leave on Sunday evening, just because you're going to be stuck in standstill traffic for a couple hours, most likely. But
well, I mean, my experience in 2019, and granted, more fans go now, but we drove to Brussels on Sunday night, and we probably left the circuit at 6:30, something like that, 2 hours after the race finished. And yeah, it took longer, but we were still in Brussels by 10:30. So
it is doable.
It is doable, and like I said, the traffic management out and in is quite well managed. You're going to be on a small road and you can't go anywhere for 10, 15 kilometers until you get well away from the circuit, and then you can kind of choose your route. And there was a lot of traffic on the motorway, but we were moving most of the time.
Yeah, well, point of reference, that's an hour drive if you were to Google Maps.
Absolutely don't plan to fly out of some airport, an hour or two away at 9 o'clock on Sunday night, because that's not going to happen.
Yeah, if you have open-ended plans, I think it's fine to try to do some of the driving, but I wouldn't plan on being somewhere at a specific time, because you need to be really fluid with it, because you don't know what it's going to be. Like, it took me almost 2.5 hours to get to Malmedy last year after the race, and we waited for about probably an hour and a half to 2 hours before we got on to our shuttle. And so probably about 2 hours post-race, we got to our shuttle, and then we sat on the shuttle for about an hour and a half just to get to Malmedy. And we were just dead stop. Nobody could move. The bus just opened the doors and people were getting in and out. People were just falling asleep. There was just nowhere to go. The only reason that I got out that fast was because my bus driver decided his shift was ending. And so he drove the wrong way down the road. And there was no oncoming traffic because nobody could go anywhere. But he just straight up drove on the wrong side of the road, past the police barriers, and just decided to go so that he could end his work shift on time. And that's the only reason I got to Malmedy in a little less than 3 hours. It was pretty bad. And we didn't start that journey until 2 hours after the race. And so, yeah, it's just, you need to, if you plan on leaving Sunday, just be kind of fluid with it. Don't have any time specifics you want to be anywhere, and just set your expectations that you're going to be stuck in traffic for a couple hours. So the best thing to do is probably just wait as long as you can. Just enjoy the circuit, because you can walk around the circuit. All the food is still open. There's music. There's a bunch of things happening where you can just kind of kill some time.
So then what about the track experience? Maybe before we get into where to be or what the circuit itself is like, what are the different options? Because we've talked a bit about the past where general admission can work or doesn't work. What is the overall experience like here?
Well, in my opinion, general admission, they call it bronze tickets in Spa, but I mean, it's got to be the best general admission viewing on the calendar. But you also have to be ready to walk up and down steep hills on unpaved paths and deal with rain and flies and drunk people, and of course getting good spot. There's a lot of elevation, as you can see that image there. That's the Kemmel Strait, which is after Eau Rouge Radignon, and that's a nice hill, but Sunday morning at 8 o'clock it's probably going to be full. And if you rock up at 10 o'clock and try and push your way through to find a piece of grass to sit on, you're probably going to not be very popular with those around you. So that's the issue. Even if you have a grandstand seat, and you can see, I think that's gold 4 in the grandstand, looking down on Eau Rouge. I would recommend, if you're going for all 3 days, Friday and Saturday, Friday especially, there'll be less fans. And if the weather's okay, that's a good day to explore general admission, because this is a circuit where I think you really have to go from, see the circuit from some different angles. But it's hard to get around. If you go back to the map. Actually, well, that picture there of the grandstands, pretty much very close to Eau Rouge near the fan zone, there's a tunnel right under the track, and that takes you through the forest to Pujon, which is another really popular viewing area for general admission, where the Silver 3 is, Pujon. But I mean, walking from La Source or the fan zone all the way up and around the circuit is possible, but it's a big walk.
It takes the path. Yeah, the paths are easy. It's easy to navigate. It's not shoulder to shoulder crowded like it gets at some tracks. It's pretty open. And it's just a long walk, and it feels uphill in both ways. And so, it's general admission here is really great because of the hills and the elevation. If you're in a smaller group, it'll be easier to find a spot. But if you have multiple people, it's probably best to absolutely get there early and hold down the spot for Sunday. And Saturday, if you're a little bit more flexible, you can probably just explore a bit and continue to some different corners, because it takes a while to get around. And so if you don't mind missing some of the action following it along, you can kind of walk throughout the session. But I mean, walking from like Pujon over to Gold 3 could take around 30 minutes or so. It depends on your speed and how well you are with the hills. And also just walking from Eau Rouge to Lacombe, it's constantly uphill. I didn't realize how steep of a hill that is. In video games and everything, it always looks flat, but it's just one long hill. And so it just kind of wears you down.
What about the grandstand seats? Are options there? Like, are there ones or which ones would you go to first if you could get the tickets?
If you look at the map there, Gold 3 is, sorry.
Yeah, Gold 3 is the new one that they rebuilt for Eau Rouge.
Okay, is it covered?
Speed track.
Yeah. It's covered. Yeah. I mean, it's a good up on the top of the hill, looking down, amazing view. It's worth noting that pretty much all the grandstands, if you look, are on that top corner of the circuit. So with the paddock in the middle and the pits, the main straight, the first corner, La Source. If you see Gold 8, La Source, that grandstand sells out probably first every year because it looks down the main straight for the start, and you can also, depending on your seat, look up towards Eau Rouge as well. So worth noting, more grandstands are covered now. This is only Gold. I don't think any of the silver grandstands are covered. But it's important for the rain. It rains, I think, every second day in this part of the world. But also for the heat, it can be really hot. So having a covered grandstand at Spa is pretty important, I think.
Yeah, and I think Gold 8 is probably one of the best grandstands to sit at, along with Gold 3 or Gold 4. I was able to get Gold 3 tickets last year, and I was like row 8, I believe, which was covered, but it was more towards the front. So as the day went on, we got less, or the sun kind of creeped over. But it protected us from we had a little bit of rain last year. It wasn't super intense, but the cover really helped. And being on a hill kind of allowed some of the wind to get to you. Just there's so many tall trees that it's not very windy like you would like Austria, for example. It makes a pretty big difference to have a covered grandstand when the sun is out, just because it does get pretty intense, even though ambient temperature may be kind of low or moderate, but with the sun bearing down on you all day, it can get a bit intense.
And what about the experiences side of things? Like, is there anything notable here that's unique to this?
Go back to that image with the 3 different kinds of tickets. Okay, you can see that building there. It's called the Business Tower, and I'll freely admit that it's it's a very old structure. It's not very fancy, but that is where F1 Experiences has one of their Champions Club hospitality suites, and I've worked there before, and the views from that building are incredible. They're insane. So whilst the standard of the building may not be as high as some of the other hospitality suites, the views more than make up for it. I think there's 4 levels of viewing. You see the top one's got all glass. It's some, you know, outdoor balcony, terrace type spaces, but it's really incredible views of, it's right between La Source and Eau Rouge, but closer to Eau Rouge. I think you can see it in the grandstand.
Middle photo, right?
Yeah, it's a higher building in the middle there.
Yeah,
and it's fantastic. And also it's right close to the support paddock. So if you have a ticket for that, you immediately, because to get in and out of there, you have to go get inner track access essentially. And on the inside of the first corner, like anyone that has access, you can get really close to the cars. They do practice starts. The support paddock is cool, and there's an awesome, really old school kind of cafe bar in the support paddock, which I do. If you do happen to have access to that area, I recommend checking it out.
Yeah, so that's my photo for the center one in the Gold 3,
Yep.
and the grandstand was recently remodeled, and it actually below it is a bunch of like restaurants and indoor bathrooms, and it was really nice. And I think that whole section up along that short straight leading up to Eau Rouge was recently renovated. I'm not sure what the facilities are down there. It might just be bleachers with the fan zones right behind it. So that's kind of where
I think it's Silver 2, is it? I can't remember the name. It's worth noting that the owners of Spa have invested a lot in the circuit in recent years, you know, in response to Formula One essentially making them do that. And then it looked like, you know, they were going to lose their spot on the calendar. But the good news is, I'm sure everyone has seen that the calendar for next year's come out, and Spa is on it. So we're going to see at least 2 more races at this circuit. Who knows what the future will look like for the circuit, but potentially like an alternation with another circuit. But fair credit to the organisers, the owners of the circuit for investing in upgrades. Yeah,
and that's one of the big things that people don't really realize is that why they're threatening Spa to get removed from the calendar. It wasn't necessarily about money like everybody thinks. It was about the fan experience. There was a lot of complaints about the traffic before, and just the infrastructure just needed to be up to date, and that's why it was being threatened to not renew the contract until the circuit decided to put some money into the local infrastructure to help the event become better and more accessible. And once they did that and they renovated Gold 3, for example, they made some changes to some of the dangers on the circuit. That's when Formula One decided to renew the contract. And it's something that doesn't really get spoken about. But even Stefano Domenicali on was it Beyond the Grid podcast recently confirmed some of those things that nobody really talks about.
Just to keep it going, one last question on the whole experience overall. Can you just talk about the card system again? You were mentioning it's a cashless system. You're getting a prepaid card. How does that work? Really quickly.
And so there's a bunch of kiosks all over the circuit. I'm not sure if it's possible to get it ahead of time, but it was all very efficient. The kiosks never really had any lines. You can basically walk up, and I think it was like €1 or €2 to buy the card, and then you can top up in whatever. I don't think it was fixed amounts. You can top up in any amount, and the prices are a little skewed because it's like 7 tokens for a beer, for example. It's not specific, but 7 tokens cost €10. And so it kind of makes you not realize exactly how much you're spending because the tokens to euros are different values.
It's like a new currency just for the weekend.
Yeah. And so the prices weren't terrible. Nothing was really like excessive. I think beers were like $6.50.
Which beer did you get?
It's just Heineken. Heineken's is like every F1 race.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I know. I was drinking a lot of...
apart from Saudi Arabia.
Fair. Yeah. We'll get to the Heineken in a second. The last thing, anything about the experience in the area, like maybe the quick highlight from those of you who have been as like the thing to do or the 2 things to do.
So there's a museum in Stavolo that I would go to. I didn't get to go last year just because it was such a kind of a quick weekend and with traffic and everything like that. But if you can get there early or stay late, I would definitely try to make some time to go to that museum. It's got all the historic cars from, you know, the endurance racing, the older Grand Prix cars. Spa has a lot of circuit history, and it's kind of like the circuits museum. But yeah, other than that, I would mention driving. If you're driving, if you have a few days, you can go over to the Nürburgring. You can go to the Nordschleife and either rent a car, or you can just spectate and hang out around there and see some. Hopefully, there's a private track day, or if it's the afternoon, they do the tourist days. That's where you can rent a car, or just normal car, or pay somebody to take you around for a lap. And it's intense. It's awesome. It's one of the coolest things I've ever done. And I would definitely recommend doing it. I think I paid 160 euros to do 2 laps in a BMW 325, like a tracked out version with a full roll cage, no interior. It was a brutal race car. My ribs and back were sore for like 2 or 3 days.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I wasn't even pushing very hard, but it's just, it's a fun thing to do. And it's less than an hour from Spa. But that's something I would definitely recommend.
Andy, anything you'd add in?
I would only mention that I haven't done too much in the immediate vicinity, but I was really impressed with Brussels. The last 2 races I worked at, I spent a night there on the way there and back, and it felt kind of similar to Paris, but it was nicer, I thought. Yeah, it was a really, I enjoyed Brussels, and yeah, I think it's worth seeing the city if you have time.
Yeah, Ron, is there anything that you would recommend for the area?
Well, yeah, Brussels is obviously kind of like the go-to city, but Antwerp is also really nice. And honestly, it might even be worth, I don't know, because I've never been there, but it might even be worth like going to the little villages around the circuit, because sometimes you'll have like these cute little restaurants and stuff. But I don't know if that's the case here. But I know that in Belgium, like some villages will be really nice with like homemade food in the restaurants and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's the type of stuff that I like to do. And there was a few places in Stavolo that were like that. That was really nice to experience.
Yeah. But then again, Brussels, Antwerp are also really nice. Luik, you could do. It depends on how far you're willing to drive or travel.
Yeah. Or where you're coming from, whether it's on your route back home.
Yeah.
On the topic of homemade food, should we switch to the Netherlands?
Yeah. Yeah, let's do it. So Zandvoort is a bit of a historic circuit that came back thanks to the hype of Max Verstappen. And it's a fun race. I went last year. I was able to enter a lottery, and I won the ability to buy tickets just because the demand there is so high. It's not a very big circuit, but it does hold a lot of people. The attendance, or the tickets originally were sold in multi-year packages for a certain amount. And so it can be a little tough to buy tickets because a lot of them are already spoken for. But entering the lottery system worked out pretty well for me. I was picked, and I was able to get tickets for Arena 1, which is kind of at the hairpin at the center of the circuit. And it's a fun race to go to. And the circuit itself doesn't have a lot of overtaking. It's kind of a more old school, smaller track. And so with some of the changes like the banking in the final corner and the bowl turn, it does change things up a bit. But I think most of the overtaking you're going to see at the circuit is going to be the Tarzan, which is turn 1, which is where I actually have tickets for this year. So it's kind of cool. I'm looking forward to that. But the circuit is situated just outside of Amsterdam, or I guess Haarlem. It's right near the, is it the North Sea?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Geography. And yeah, it's really easy to get to. Everything's really connected. And Ronan, what if you were trying to get out to the circuit? What's the way you would go?
From where I live?
Sure.
I mean, okay, so from where I live is Breda, so it's in the south. I would probably go by train to, you can go to Amsterdam, and then there will be there's a direct train to Amsterdam going from basically anywhere in the Netherlands, unless you're like really far up north. But honestly, just Amsterdam and then Zandvoort.
Yeah, so as long as you can get to Amsterdam, you should be pretty well connected. And so I flew in Amsterdam. I doubled up last year, did Spa and Zandvoort back to back. So I flew in and out of Amsterdam, but we had rented a car and drove to Spa and drove to Cologne. And on the way back, dropped off a rental car, and I stayed in Jordan neighborhood of Amsterdam. And from there, I was able to get a tram pass and take the street tram over to Central. And then from there, I think it was about 20 euros for a return ticket to Zandvoort each day. But it was really easy to do. There's trains every 4 minutes. There's some other options that you can take to get to the circuit, but I think train is going to be the most efficient. It just moves a ton of people, and they utilize both platforms out there. They do make a couple of stops at it's a Sloterdijk. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they stop there, which is just outside the center of Amsterdam. And then they stop in Haarlem. And there was one more stop. I don't remember where. So if you can get to either of those cities, you should be able to hop on a train pretty quickly. And they're every 4 minutes. And so the crowds can be a bit intimidating at the train stations, but it's really not bad. Everything just moves. And it feels like you're in the crowd of a concert, kind of shoulder to shoulder, but everybody just moves, and people are very respectful. And it just, I don't know, it was a bit overwhelming, but once you realize that it's really not that bad, it just kind of just let it happen and go with it. And
the one thing to know, I think that was really interesting for this is they need to be, to keep hosting it, they need to be what, completely carbon neutral? Is that the nuance? And so there's like no cars are allowed within, what's it, 30 minutes of the circuit?
Yeah,
I think it's also practical because
yeah,
Zandvoort is it's a relatively large seaside town, but the road, it's not like it's next to major highways. You know, there's like a lot of small roads coming in and out. And if you let cars come in and out on race weekend, you know, it would be total gridlock. So the exclusion zone was about 10 kilometers all around Zandvoort. And, you know, unless you're a VVIP, you're not going to be driving in there on race weekend. And of course, there's a very good percentage of fans that come to the track on their bicycles.
Yeah.
Yeah. So bicycles is another good option. There's some, I was on the train and there was a lot of bike paths that kind of just pop up and out of the sand dunes where I don't know where they're coming from, but I know there's some park and ride areas.
We make them.
Yeah. Or that. But there's some really big bike parking. Yeah. Like you can see in the bottom image, there's just a ton of bikes. I mean, it's the Netherlands. Yeah.
But just also something to be mindful of, like having been in Mexico City where everyone drove, you drive right to the circuit. Like, yes, there's traffic, it's backed up, but like you just don't even think about it. You'd leave and you could take an Uber. You can't here. And even though it's not that far of a drive, you can't do the drive. So you just have to plan ahead of it.
Yeah. And so another option is, like you see in the photo, is the buses. They have some pickup spots kind of spread around some of the major cities. But it seems a little bit not as long distance. I think if you're going a long distance, I think train is probably the more efficient way. But if, say, you're a little bit further from Central, there was one of the major bus pickup locations was in the south side of Amsterdam, which I think was also connected by train. And so if you just kind of want to avoid the central area of Amsterdam, you can just head to the south side and take a bus from there that'll take you to the circuit. And I think from the bus drop off, it was just a few minutes walk. I think it was closer than the train, if I remember correctly. But,
how about the lodging options for this? So given where it is, I think very close to Amsterdam.
I don't know much about the camping at Zandvoort, but I know there are campgrounds. in terms of, trying to get a room in Zandvoort itself, good luck. There is quite a lot of accommodation there, but because it's a seaside town, a popular place to go in the Netherlands. But, I think the locals and the Max Verstappen fans have, reserved every single available option 3 years in advance, even.
Yeah.
So if you look at, booking.com or Airbnb, there's not going to be anything. And if there is, it'll be 10 times what it should be in terms of the price.
Yeah. Another thing about Airbnb is I believe that they have some pretty strict rules and regulations on the number of nights that they can rent properties. And so being a seaside town, it's already kind of booked during the summer. And so once a property like that usually hits a certain number of nights, they're not allowed to be booked anymore. And so they just black out all the dates for the rest of the year. That at least that's what happens in Amsterdam. And I'm not sure if that's something Netherlands specific or something Amsterdam specific, but that's something to consider, is that some places are limited on what they can and can't rent just due to some local regulations.
I mean, I think the obvious place to stay for this race is in Amsterdam itself. Not that there's, a huge amount of accommodation and it's going to be expensive, but it makes sense given the 30-minute train connection, the fact that Amsterdam is one of the most beautiful and visited cities in Europe. It is the logical base for race weekend.
Yeah, it's easy to get around. The great food. Yeah, everything is just easy. It's easy to do, and most people speak English, which is really nice for me. I know a little bit of basic Dutch, which can help. There's been some times where I'm ordering food or drinks, and it comes in handy to just know the numbers, like 1, 2, 3 kind of thing.
What's it, lekker? Is that the phrase?
I mean, that means like that it's good. Yeah, I doubt you'll hear a Dutch person say it, but it's nice. It's nice as like a Dutch person. It's nice to have a tourist like talk to you and like have some simple Dutch phrases.
Yeah, that's why little interactions like that really help.
No, that's the only one I learned. So yeah.
No, honestly, everyone here speaks English, unless like maybe some like really old people don't, but everyone. Everyone just speaks English.
Yeah, there's one place I went to have pizza, and the woman only spoke Italian and Dutch. But luckily, I also know a little bit of Italian, so I understood the Italian, or I understood the Dutch, but then spoke in Italian, and then she like, oh, okay, then totally helped me out. And so that's one of the few times where I completely like not English interaction that was able to make work and make it happen and get my pizza for dinner.
I think it's one of the advantages of this race. I mean, if we compare it to, popular races in Spain or Italy, there's a couple, the language barrier is real for foreign fans, especially Americans. I don't know why I had to single you guys out, but no, I personally think the two best organized races in Europe are Austria and Netherlands.
I fully agree. For the ones that I've been to, I just got back from Austria and everything was really organized. And that's probably Zandvoort is probably right up there with it as far as organization. It's just really easy to do. If you take the train, it's about a 10 to 15-minute walk to Gate 2, which is right near the fan zone, kind of by the final corner on that portion of the track. But it's a really easy walk. On that walk, there's a lot of restaurants and bars and things that you can stop at on the way. We're actually doing a meetup out there on Saturday after qualifying. It's about an hour after qualifying that we're going to be at. We have a reservation at, is it Club Nautique?
On the beach.
Yeah. And normally last year, a lot of these restaurants were kind of reserved for like private events or hospitality, but we were able to get a reservation at this one spot, and it's about an hour after qualifying. So it's the end of the track action. So I figured that would be a good time for people to kind of wait out some traffic and have a beer and have a little bit of a meetup with us. And the place also has food where if you're looking for a meal, you can, we'll have food and everything going too. So it should be a good time. But around there, you'll see a lot of merch tents, like selling official team merch. And They had a big bus selling the official Max Verstappen like merchandise, and the prices weren't too bad. I think I got a Max Netherlands shirt it's made specifically for the race for like I think 25 or 30 euros, which for F1 merch, that's like really good price.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's plenty to do around that area. It's one of the benefits of just taking a train and getting out there early, and then just getting breakfast or lunch and having a beer right on the beach. It's just a good time to kind of soak in the vibe. And so let's talk about the tickets.
Yeah, well, one thing I would say, and I'd like to hear how it was last year for you, Adam, but in 2021, I mean, the limitations of this circuit, like it's an old circuit built in sand dunes, essentially, next to the beach. And it wasn't a capacity crowd in 2021 when I went, but it was 70%, I think. And you know, a lot of the walkways and the areas, you know, the paths and tunnels around the track, you know, under the track and things like that got really, really busy. You know, it's not a big circuit. There's not lots of open space. You know, behind the grandstands, it was limited room. It's okay if everyone's in the grandstands watching, but you know, as soon as the session finishes, you know, the paths got, you know, really blocked, and you know, it was a bit challenging from the people movement perspective, I found.
So last year, it didn't feel as bad as Circuit of the Americas, because that is probably the most crowded that I've experienced. It just shoulder to shoulder everywhere throughout the weekend. It just
even worse really than Canada coming in and out, because that's a small island.
Yeah, I guess Canada is similar to Coda. It's just
Canada had more space. Coda definitely felt crammed in.
Yeah, well, it's because both of them just have a bunch of vendors that line the path. And so in Canada, the lines go into the pass and block the path. In Austin, the vendors kind of, I don't know, the lines run parallel to the walking path. So I don't know, it doesn't feel as bad in some areas, but like trying to cross the bridge over by, was it turn 15 or turn 18? To get across the track towards the S's by turn 4 in Austin can take 30 to 40 minutes, where you're just stuck on a bridge and you can't go anywhere. It takes a long time just to cross the bridge. And that's not including trying to get behind the grandstand over to like turn 9, for example. Zandvoort, I felt like didn't really have as bad of an issue. It was crowded, but it was, I don't know, it seemed like it still moved. I was by myself on Saturday, then on Sunday, my wife joined me. And I didn't really think it was overbearing. It was a bit of not shoulder to shoulder, but it wasn't as crowded. I don't know. The paths, they're not very wide, but it all just seemed like it moved. The fan zone, I think, was the most crowded. It was hard to find a place to sit down and eat, even when I was by myself. But there's some large tents and stuff where they have some specific areas for sitting down and eating, but for the most part, you're not really going to find a table, just because at peak times, at least.
I talked about the sand hills, and that's an advantage because pretty much all the viewing areas at Zandvoort are raised up on the sand hills. You're looking down on the track, which is obviously good for spectating. One thing I would mention, and maybe also Ronan could talk about this in a moment, you know, there's only been 2 races back at Zandvoort, both of them glorious weather, you know, end of the summer type weather. First went to the track in 2019, and it was on the same weekend. I think it was the last weekend of August or the 1st of September. I wanted to have a look at the circuit. I knew it was coming back. I know it got delayed, but I went to the historic Grand Prix on the same weekend in 2019, and it rained the whole weekend. It was miserable. And look, I mean, I really hope it's sunny and lovely this year again. But of course, there is a chance, you know, it's next to the North Sea, you know, next to a beach, you know, you need to account for the fact that it may not be glorious or weather the whole weekend either.
Jinxed it.
Absolutely. It's we are in kind of like a heat wave right now, where we are getting proper summers for the first time, but definitely, it can always rain in the Netherlands at any given time. We have a lot of rain. It's known. We just have like a rainy country, so definitely take your rain gear.
Yeah, wet sand sounds unpleasant to walk through or to sit
in. Oh,
it
definitely is. Trust me, that's really not pleasant. I hope it doesn't rain, but you just never know.
So the general admission hills are pretty much all sand. That's where you
sand and kind of grassy areas.
Yeah,
a lot of sand.
Yeah. So the general admission views are pretty good. It's because it's all elevated. You're looking down at the circuit. General admission, I think, is a really good option if you can get tickets. I would go with the grandstand just to have a more guaranteed seat with a screen. But general admission is it's still a great option. I would
You sat in the arena grandstand. I mean, there's arena in, arena out. There's quite a few that's almost like a stadium section of the track. And I know 2021 and probably last year, did they have a DJ, stage and, real party atmosphere? I mean, the whole circuit has a party atmosphere, but especially there.
Yeah. And so the Arena 1, I sat right at the kind of where the dot is for turn 12 in this image. I sat in that little corner of Arena 1, which is the larger grandstand of that section. And it reminded me of Photosol in Mexico City, where it's just like an arena, like a stadium where the cars drive through, and the crowd was loud. In between every track session, there was a DJ or some kind of music playing on the stage, kind of set off towards the left side of the grandstand. Between Arena In and the Arena 1 grandstand is where they had a big stage where there was music, and they had some people, like some dancers performing and stuff like that. And just across at the infield, on the opposite side of the track from Arena 1 was a kind of like a podium with screens facing in 3 different directions. And so it provided some viewing and easier ways to follow for the grandstands. The general admission kind of, if you look at the image, kind of circles around between turn 5 out there towards the hairpin. And I don't know if there's screens out there. I feel like there probably is, but they might be a little bit more limited and harder to see. So that's something there. Something you should probably scope out on Friday and Saturday and plan to be there early for a spot on Sunday. And one GA spot that I don't see on this map was outside of the final corners. They had a spot kind of outside of turn 13.
Yeah, I watched from there as well.
Yeah, I walked through there and I walked up the hill and I watched some of the free practice 3 last year from that spot. And it's really cool seeing the cars just fly into that corner onto the banking. It's really cool to see.
What's the difference between the GA2 and GA1? Because GA1 looks like you can pretty much go anywhere.
I think they limit the area you can access. I don't think that you can, like, there's 2 different general admission areas, and you can only access GA2 with a GA2 ticket or GA1 with a GA1 ticket. It's kind of just to help limit the number of people in certain areas and kind of spread everybody out.
Which one would you do?
Honestly, either of them aren't too bad. I would probably sit towards the turn 9 area, because that's probably where you're going to see more of the overtaking compared to Tarzan. Tarzan, which is turn 1, probably will have the most overtaking, but the crowd is pretty massive out there, but it's mostly grandstand views. I would probably try to find a spot around turn 8 or 9. You see the cars at speed kind of fly through those corners out that turn 7, just fast section. And then you'll see them hard into braking, and that's kind of where you see some of the cars lock the wheels, or just some more of attacking or setting up an overtake into the turn 11. It's just one of the more interesting spots on the circuit.
How about you, Andy or Ronan? Anything else on this?
I mean, I've never been, so I'm not quite sure, to be honest.
I think Adam's covered most of it. I sat in a few of the different grandstands and took some photos in 2021. I had a chance. I wasn't particularly impressed with the bronze hairpin grandstands, especially looking at the image, the one on the left, because you get a really kind of poor view. The cars are coming out of the corner. The number one, I think, on the right was better. But in terms of atmosphere and the best combination of atmosphere and views, and also ease of access, because we talked about the fan zone being on the outside of turn 13 and 14. Yeah. And that's also the closest gate to the train station. So if you're coming by train, you're going to enter the circuit that way. I thought Arena had an amazing atmosphere, and the one that you sat in, Adam, had really good views. I think that's the best one. Of course, Tarzan being on the outside of the first corner is also a great view because you're more likely to see overtaking.
I think the east side grandstands would be a pretty good option as well. Like the outside of the Arena Inn, you'll see the cars under braking, and you still get the whole stadium atmosphere just kind of from across the track. But I think if you can
and you can also tell which ones have the best views, because the first one is a bronze on the approach, you're on a straight, and then it's silver as you get closer, and then it's gold right on the corner. So you know, you pay more, you get a better view.
I bet you're very organized.
Yeah.
All right.
I will only mention weather one more time, but only one grandstand I believe that's covered, and that is the main grandstand, which is a permanent structure. All the others are temporary. So check the weather forecast. If it looks at all any chance, get ready with your wet weather gear.
Yeah. So now let's talk about visiting Amsterdam, which is one of my favorite places to go. There's different ways you can experience the city, but doing some of the normal tourist stuff, like taking a canal cruise or going to the Van Gogh Museum or the Wreck Museum, those are always fun experiences. They can take a better part of the day depending on how in depth you want to go, but I would definitely recommend an evening canal cruise. Just kind of some of those you can, you know, they usually serve beer or snacks and stuff like that. You just kind of get to socialize, which I did one last year, and turned out to be half the boat were people there for the Grand Prix. And so it just turned into a bunch of Americans on the boat talking about F1 and drinking beer, which wasn't bad. It was a good time. Yeah, there's a lot of history in Amsterdam that's really cool that you can learn about through one of the canal cruises.
One alternate way to do it that we did one of the trips when I went several years back was we actually just rented the boat, so you can rent them on your own. We went to a grocery store, we grabbed some wine, we grabbed some food, and we just drove around the canal. And it's like a very tiny electric motor. You can't go fast. You will be completely safe, but it's a super fun way, like a nice evening experience if the weather's good. So those are one other way to do it.
Yeah. The Heineken Museum was pretty cool to check out. It's kind of, I don't know, it's super touristy, nothing really special about it, but you learn more history about the beer and just the original building and things like that. It's worth doing. It's only a few dollars. It's not a crazy amount, and it's surrounded by, it's right in the middle of Amsterdam, so there's a bunch to do around there as well. It doesn't have to be, it's not something that's super far out of the way or takes all day.
Yeah. One other pro tip for that one is they used to do, I don't know if they still do, but you would get a drink with your ticket, and it would be a little like plastic punch, like on a wristband. And if you look on the floor where they serve all the beer, usually some people's have fallen off. So you might be able to get a couple extra. So it's a great way to turn your ticket and a beer into a ticket and a couple. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, they did have those last year, but I didn't look on the floor.
Well, we were post-college, so yeah.
Yeah. And then there's a really cool market you can go to, and you can have some fresh stroopwafels. I'm going blank on the name of the market.
Albert Kuip.
Yes.
What was it?
Albert Kuip Markt. It's I used to go there with my grandma. It's definitely worth a visit.
Yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff to see, and just some fresh stroopwafels. They're just delicious.
Yeah. Where in the city is it?
It's basically in the center.
Yeah. It's like a pop-up market in the street where it's just a lot of different food and tents. Can think of like a farmer's market, and there's a lot of really, depending on the season, You can, or I mean, if you're there in the spring, you can get some really beautiful looking tulips. And if you're there in the spring, I definitely recommend going to Keukenhof, the tulip festival.
Oh yeah.
It's great. It blew my mind how big those flowers are. In America, we get tulips that are about this big, and out there, they're like giant bulbs the size of my head. It's crazy. But Amsterdam itself is just a great city to visit, and I would definitely recommend visiting some of the other cities. Or what do you recommend if I'm visiting the Netherlands? What do you recommend running where I want to get outside of Amsterdam?
Well, everything is easily accessible by train, so you can basically go anywhere you want within a country. But I'd say, also depending on what you want, obviously, but Utrecht is really nice. It's not too far from Amsterdam. It's maybe 20-30 minutes by train. You can go to like Rotterdam as well, Den Haag, The Hague. It's also really nice. We have the Parliament building there. You can also go to like Eindhoven, which is more of where I live in the south. You can even do Limburg, Maastricht, or Groningen. But Groningen is all the way up north, so it's pretty far.
That's where Assen is, isn't it? The MotoGP track.
Always wanted to go to that track.
Yeah. But Groningen is a very beautiful city. So if you have time and you want to like see the country, I definitely recommend Groningen.
I went to a Ajax and Groningen match at Amsterdam Arena a few years back. That was a really fun experience.
Yeah.
I saw Real Madrid play them there. That was cool.
Nice.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, that's a really cool experience. If there's a football match happening at Amsterdam Arena, no matter what the team is, just go if you can get tickets.
Oh yeah, for sure. We also have concerts going on there and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, it seems like there's always something to do in Amsterdam. It's just
there definitely is. Yeah. As for Amsterdam, I would say definitely do the touristy stuff, but if you got time, go outside the center as well. Yeah. To like basically the neighborhood surrounding the center. So you would have say the Pijp. It's more of the authentic Amsterdam vibe and more really of where I would go. Yeah, if I take people to Amsterdam or if I show people around, that's where I take them.
Yeah. I've stayed in De Pijp a couple times, and that's one of my favorite neighborhoods.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, that or we also just find some food and then go have like a picnic in Vondelpark and just hang out and explore.
Yeah, Westerpark is also really nice. Yeah.
Gypsy King, they're all over. No, it's like.
But are we all going to the Dutch Grand Prix this year?
I guess so, right?
Yeah.
Ronan, are you going?
I want to, but I have to see if I can make it work.
Yeah.
Should be convinced.
Yeah, I think we can make it happen.
It's just such an easy, like, going to the Netherlands just is like amazing. Just because you land and it's so easy. Like, if anyone's going for the first time ever, or especially traveling for the first time, like, don't be afraid. It's like the coolest and easiest thing.
I feel like it's one of the easiest cities to get to in Europe, and it's easy to explore, where you don't need to worry about transportation because you could take a train everywhere. Or once you get to Schiphol, you can take the train to Central, and then from there you can either walk somewhere to your hotel, or you can take the street trams. They're just everything is just really easy to do.
You can go anywhere by train within 4 or 5 hours, anywhere in the country.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll all be out there. Hopefully Ronan can get out there and
hopefully
and join us for the meetup over at Zandvoort post quali and drink a beer with us and hang out and talk and kill some time. And I think we're about to wrap this episode up. We'll probably be doing another one in a couple of weeks. I don't know, it's on my head which one is next. But if you guys have any questions, not necessarily about those specific races that we're going to be talking about, just questions in general, feel free to message me. You can send me a message through either FanAmp or on Reddit through Grand Prix Travel, and join us on FanAmp. I mean, we've got some pretty spontaneous group meetups happening, just sharing live tips at going to the races. I mean, it's pretty cool. It's something that's brand new and not really anywhere, where it hasn't existed before, where you can just download an app and connect with people going to a race without having to have any exclusive invites or shared links. It's just easy to do. So feel free to download the app, and even if you don't contribute to the conversation, just watch the conversation happen. And we had some people meet up at Austria. At Graz, we had our meetup out there, and who hadn't messaged me or confirmed or anything, and they just kind of show up. And it's pretty fun. We had a good time.
I mean, there's one next weekend, isn't there, in Hungary?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There will be a meetup in Hungary, and that's all just like community driven, which is awesome. Yeah. So if you're in Hungary,
they chose a great venue, one of the ruin bars, the biggest and best.
that was amazing. Well, thank you for the compliment. The American planned it, yeah.
Yeah, I've never been to Budapest. Hopefully I can make it out there.
But if you have been to Budapest, you know where this bar is. If you've done it properly.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, so we'll have one there, and there'll be ones at a bunch of other races at this point. So we'll have one in Zandvoort, as we mentioned. We'll have one in Singapore and in Japan as well. So yeah, definitely jump in.
Yeah, we've got some stuff planned for Austin as well. The details will be out hopefully pretty soon. And yeah, join the group on FanAmp. We've got a good base going on there. Join us on the subreddit. Post your race reviews. Share your experiences. It doesn't have to be super in depth. It's just try to get some info to help others. Stuff like this doesn't really exist anywhere, and so that's where we're just kind of trying to share the information and make it easy to find.
And I think the last thing would be if there wasn't anything that got answered, there's something that wasn't answered that you're not seeing here, then Andy writes the best guides that are out there. So if you head over to the website, f1destinations.com, you can look up any of the questions, and categorically you will find a guide for it. So
or you can put a comment underneath with your question, and I do get back to everyone.
Yeah. And Ronan, where can people follow you and your travels?
Honestly, my Instagram would probably be best, which is just at Ronan Figurds. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you post any of Lando and Leclerc photos?
Oh yeah, a whole bunch. I got comments of people saying like, "Wow, that's a lot of posts." I was like, "Yeah, I had too many pictures."
Yeah. Is Lando still wearing your bracelet?
I don't know. He was in Silverstone.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Some good times.
Yeah.
But, all right, guys. Well, I guess we're gonna wrap this up, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, everyone.
See you later.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.